Good to see everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to our last parent coffee of the year. This last meeting is traditionally the volunteer appreciation breakfast. So if you haven't had a chance to get breakfast yet, please feel free to get up, get breakfast, get seconds. This is also the meeting when we share our appreciation for our retiring teachers, whom we will miss dearly. So I would now like to invite Laura Arledge to please come up and join me here. Laura, on behalf of PAWS and all the parents and children in Love Hall, we would just like to honor your dedication to our children for the last 24 years of your teaching. It's hard to imagine the pre-first and first grade hallway without you. We'll miss you dearly. But we wish you the best of luck in your retirement and hope that you will visit us often. We would like to dedicate this book to you, Courageous World Changers. This was chosen with love by our expert librarians and with guidance from Sarah Chapman and the Bible study teachers.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
This book, I think this is very fitting since you have made a lasting impression on a generation or two of our youngest learners who will most likely, almost certainly change the world one day.
You know what? I think they will change the world one day.
So one copy is for you, and then we're going to keep one copy in the library.
Oh, how wonderful.
So that you can remember
Thank
us
you
all.
so much.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. So we have a great meeting today. Our featured speaker is Tim Downs, Director of Athletics. He will talk to us about charting the course of athletics for our children. And at first impression, it might seem like it's early to be talking about the athletic trajectory for our kids, but I'm sure I'm not the only parent who has struggled to figure out what's the best way to invest my time, my energy, my resources in after-school activities to set my kids up for success. So Tim is here to reassure us that we're all on the right path. We'll also hear from Keith Evans and Lauren Dupriest, who kindly are joining us again today to share updates about the lower school and Westminster. But first, it is my great pleasure to introduce Naya Yarrow, our VP of Equity and Inclusion, who will start our meeting off with a devotion. Naya was born and raised in Rochester, New York. She came to Atlanta for grad school at Emory, and then after a brief stint in Boston, she came to her senses and returned to Atlanta. Her husband, Abdul, who has volunteered for his share of PAWS events as well, was born in Nigeria and later moved to San Francisco for school. He and Naya met at church in Atlanta, and as they say, the rest is history. They are parents to Yasmin in 4th grade, and their daughter Zara will be the youngest Wildcat in their family this fall when she starts pre-first. They came to Love Hall in 2020 during COVID, and that was when Yasmin was in 2nd grade. They were drawn to Westminster for the academic rigor, the Christian emphasis, and the community building aspect. So I asked Naya, how did you navigate making these connections during a time when it was really hard to meet people? And she credits the Village Affinity Group, Yasmin's Brownie Troop, and PAWS with helping her to feel connected to our larger community. So, Naya?
Good morning. Thank you, Farrah, for that wonderful introduction. And I want to thank you personally just for the great things you've done for PAWS this year. Well, guys, I can't believe this is our last coffee and conversation. The year has just flown by so quickly. When I was asked to give the devotional, I thought extensively about what I'd like to speak about. Honestly, this was a difficult task. It required me setting aside time in my hectic schedule and really just having the time to reflect over the year. Reflection is a ritual that I've come to value, and I do this ongoing exercise, but it's most valuable 2 times a year. I think at the beginning of the year, like most of us, when we make our resolutions to put down bad habits and to adopt new ones, and to become better versions of ourselves. I think the second time, and then the second time for the self-reflection occurs at the end of each school year. This review is less about me as an individual and more about me as a parent and my children's personal and academic growth. It's a time to celebrate their progress and the milestones that they've achieved. It's a shared success. Think about all the practices, the rehearsals, the meetings, the games, performances, recitals, and special days throughout the school year. You get credit for getting them where they needed to go, pushing them to practice, high-fiving and fist-bumping for doing a great job, and wiping away all the tears of disappointment. And ultimately, the satisfaction we all feel being there the moment they get to show off their hard work. They get credit for being motivated, persuaded, heavily negotiated with, bribed to do what was necessary to achieve their goals. And after all of this reflecting and patting myself on the back because the finish line is near, I asked myself, what lessons have I learned that I can share with all of you today? The first thing that stood out is how busy I felt. And in all that busyness, it leads to a lot of hurrying, trying to fit so much into a limited time. If you're like me, your checklists have checklists. We just want it done. But have you noticed that for all the hurrying that we do, we still have to wait? Hurry up and wait. Two sides of the same coin. When we rush through the myriad of things that we have to do, we cannot be fully present for our children. And we sometimes miss critical moments. Recently, my 4-year-old said, "Mommy, do you want to hear me count?" Now, this was in the middle of trying to get her strapped in carpool, and there were tons of cars behind us. And I said, "Just hurry up and let's go, let's get out of here." "But Mommy," she said, and I cut her off by telling her, "I've heard you count to 20 a million times and beyond. What's so special about this?" And she said, "No, I want to count for you in French and Spanish." I immediately felt terrible, and I asked her to do it in both languages. I then congratulated her for mastering that skill. But I almost missed it because I wasn't tuned in and I was only half listening. So the first challenge that I pose to all of you is carving out small moments when we can be fully present with our kids, putting our phones down and other distractions, and being intentional about spending quality time when we are not in a hurry and feeling rushed. This may mean daily time designated for them or a weekly activity that you both look forward to. And each child needs their own special time with you. The second dilemma I had this year was the wait. How many times are we rushing to get someplace only to have to wait for something else to happen to complete the task? We might use an app to order ahead, but still wait in line at Starbucks or at the grocery store. We wait in line each day at carpool and then again in traffic around the city. Waiting is not easy. The challenge with waiting is patience. We should ask ourselves, are we patient with our own children when they struggle with challenging material in class? Learning an instrument, how about playing a sport? Or figuring out their emotions and how to fit in with their peers? An expert source I found on this subject is one of my children's favorite books, Waiting is Not Easy. This is an Elephant and Piggy book by Mo Williams, and in this critically acclaimed writing, Piggy has a big surprise for her friend Gerald the elephant. At first, Gerald gets super excited, and then he starts to become anxious, threatens to leave, and then resorts to pleading, and finally works himself into a frenzy of self-doubt and frustration that all this waiting is not worth the trouble. At last, it gets dark, and the night sky illuminates the most beautiful stars, and Gerald proclaims, "This was worth the wait." I offer that as we look forward to a well-deserved break this summer, we not hurry through these final activities. Instead, let's take stock and smell the roses, as they say. For some, this will be the last year in the lower school. And what will that feel like to be moving on to a new division? For other students, we can point to their growth academically, socially, and physically. My 4th grader is now taller than I am. Whatever it is, your child has gone through a phase of development this year. And did we notice, or were we present? Are we patient with our children as they've gone through their growing pains? Even if you fell short of these goals, I want to congratulate you for all of the things that you were able to accomplish and for getting to the finish line. I want to conclude by praying for all of us and our children. I pray that we continue to cherish the precious time and moments shared together. It goes by too quickly. I pray for all of us as parents and those charged with caring for our children for wisdom, strength, and understanding. Continue to put trust in God or the authority that guides you in all things. I'll leave you with this comforting passage from the Bible. Matthew chapter 6, verse 34 reads, "Therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Amen.
Thank you so much, Naya. And now I would like to thank all of you, our parent volunteers, who brought back all of our events in full force for the first time in 3 years. You maintained our beloved traditions while finding ways to innovate and evolve. From our behind-the-scenes leaders, the executive committee, who steered our parent chairs in executing their events, to arts and extracurricular, service, community building activities, events for the lower school, events specific to certain grades, and our affinity group leaders. None of this would have been possible without you. I'd like to give a special thank you to our 26 room representatives who are the front line for our parents, and they are especially instrumental in making our new families feel welcome. We're excited to, in the coming weeks, we'll announce the slate for next year's Parents Council. But in the meantime, we still need volunteers for room representatives. So if you have been wanting to get involved and you don't know where to get started, being a room rep is a great way to meet other people in your class and your grade. It's very flexible, it's email-based primarily, you can do it from work, you can do it in the evening. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Lindsay or myself. You should be able to find the self-nomination form in the WPU or in an email from your room rep. So now I will pass it over to Keith, who will give us our update about school.
Thank you, Farah, and I offer my thanks to all of you as well for all of your work on behalf of Westminster and your volunteering. We really appreciate it, and honestly, the PAWS groups both in the lower and the middle and upper school really glue the school together in a lot of ways. The way that you all help foster and build community is super important to us, so thank you very, very much. Has anyone noticed fences and trees and roadways? And I've been in this meeting several times and I've been sort of teasing you with like, we're gonna build some stuff and this kind of thing. So I'm gonna take you through a couple of years of planning and what will be about a year's worth of construction in about 7 minutes. And so just know that you've got an email from us that you can sort of use as reference. But I just thought I'd interpret and comment just a little bit on what we've sent out and kind of give you a sense of what this is going to, what it's all going to mean. As we got started in the process of planning, we spent a lot of time with our architects and planners in conversation with lower school parents, faculty, staff, really trying to kind of understand what the primary needs are. In a school setting, as is true in our individual houses and our offices, et cetera, there are always more wants than there are capacity to fill all of those wants. And so we end up prioritizing and phasing and making sure that things are sequenced in a way that they make sense and that they're done as efficiently as possible. And so as we went through that process here, the list that you see behind me was what sort of bubbled to the top in those conversations and has since been affirmed a number of times over. I just want to offer that the very first bullet point, which relates to this room itself, almost doesn't need an explanation. As you look around here in the orchestral music room, in the meeting room, in the dining hall, et cetera, we're really looking forward to providing some relief to this space, allowing it to come back to being a dining facility and having some other meeting spaces for things like this. The other thing, which I think is probably the most discussed change in the lower school, is going to be what we'll call the sort of bringing in of the ASK program inside of the building. I've had more conversation with people about the multiple generations that have been in the ASK building since, my child was in there, it was a temporary facility. Now my grandchild is in there, it's a temporary facility, and so we're really excited about that part of the day and how we can integrate the after-school care program into the life of the rest of the school. One of the other things that we're really have been trying to do, and you'll see this theme play out over a period of time in the way the campus plan is going to evolve and change, is we're really trying to take things that in some ways were built on this campus to be separate. We're trying to connect them. And so lower, middle to upper, different disciplines, trying to create connections between those different elements of the school in a way that really builds community for the entire pre-1 to 12 continuum. I put up this map really just for the purpose of showing you that for as much as Love Hall sits up here on one of our ridges, has a couple of obstacles in its way to getting over to the middle and upper school side of campus, Love Hall is actually about half as far away from Barge Commons as Turner Athletic, the Turner Athletic Gym is. And I think what this speaks to is the possibility that both the work that we're about to do and then over time that we're able to create connections, pedestrian pathways, ways in which Love Hall can begin to be connected to, access the resources of Barge Commons and the rest of the other side of the campus, and at the same time have some things here at Love Hall that the rest of the campus uses as well, and again begin to knit that community together of the 2,500 people who are here on this campus every day. I don't think that anyone would argue that right now we have a little bit of an entrance and welcome problem out in front of Love Hall. If you go back into some of the original work that was done down here, this was actually the back door, and it's kind of become a front door in a lot of ways because of how carpool has worked out. And so first, right out of the gate, what we're imagining is a more welcoming entrance and a more gracious way that we're welcoming families and students to the school. In this addition here onto the front, we're moving Lauren Dupriest and her team out here to the front of Love Hall as a way of providing easy access and kind of visual access, if you will, to the leadership of Love Hall. We're also in this rendering, you can see over to my left, I guess if you're right, an auditorium that'll begin to alleviate some of the pressure that's on this space and give Love Hall and really the rest of the school a place for meetings like this, performances, other kinds of activities. One of the things that we're also super excited about is beginning to put into place some of the collaborative kinds of spaces for Love Hall that you see playing out over in Barge, Campbell, and other places around campus. Right now, a lot of these kind of spaces live in hallways that have kind of been commandeered as teachers are looking for ways they can find space for students to work together. We want to be much more intentional about that and offer those kinds of spaces in this edition. Probably the jewel in the crown and the centerpiece is an auditorium. It's built in a particular way for younger children, and so you don't see a big stage here. What you see is a large flat floor that can be used for multiple different purposes. You can actually seat younger children on that floor, or you could do the innovation fair on that floor. Then there's enough seating there to seat about 3/4 of the Love Hall student population. So it's also a place between the floor and the seating that the entire school can meet. It's also a place that a meeting like this could happen, and would be one less turn that this room needs to make in order to accommodate all the needs that the school has. It's also going to have a lot of natural light in it, and so this is not to sort of be thought of as a black box theater. This is much more of a gathering space, much more of a kind of central hub of the school's activity, and a space that we believe will be useful to us across the entire school for parent and student meetings of different kinds. And so we expect that some of those pathways that Love Hall students and families will use to kind of go over to the other side of the campus will also have a bit of a reverse flow as families and students use spaces over here and get accustomed to what's here. There's a large investment being made in the new space in an innovation wing. Many of you all know that much of the innovative practice of the school actually was born here in Love Hall. Design thinking really was one of the things that got us started down a path of thinking about new ways of teaching and learning. And so we want to come in and provide 3 design labs and 2 art labs in this new footprint that really allow us to take some spaces that have been, again, repurposed for design thinking and that kind of thing, and create spaces that are really intended for those purposes. They're put right in the middle of other collaborative spaces that are going to be here in this edition. And those rooms will be outfitted in such a way that they're built for the purpose for which they're going to be used, as opposed to being readapted for those purposes. We'll also be taking the art studios and putting them in this new edition, and what that's going to do is it's going to open up this whole area here to my left, plus the library, to a complete sort of gut renovation. And so one of the things that we're super excited about is that this long hallway behind me, we call it the Green Mile, suddenly gets opened up, and the wall comes out of the library. We turn that into a learning commons, and the entrance to the school for students and for families becomes a much more open and gracious kind of entrance, instead of a long half-a-mile walk into the center of the building. This is actually a view of this edition from sort of with your back to the Barge Commons side of things. And so what you see is that not only do those innovation labs have a way that they open to the outdoors and allow some of that natural light and fresh air into the space, but there's also, really for the first time, a large, flat grass space for Love Hall students that doesn't have grade in it, that doesn't have other kinds of obstacles, and that large space also represents a land bank for the future. So what I want you to imagine is that over time, Love Hall is building and migrating toward the rest of the school, and doing it in such a way that when you have that kind of land bank, you don't have to displace students in order to continue construction. That's a really important thing, particularly for kids of this age. On the other side of the campus, we had a little village of mobile homes that we called cottages, learning cottages, and they actually coincidentally helped us a lot as the pandemic was getting started. We won't have to do that here with this construction. We don't really anticipate having to do it into the future because we have this land here in the current, or rather the old softball field, and of course that softball field has been rebuilt down by the baseball field. Kind of give you a sense of timing. What you see being built right now is a construction road. Don't want to be bringing construction vehicles in the middle of Carpool. Carpool has challenges of its own without having dump trucks involved in it. And so that construction road will also separate the traffic from student activity and that kind of thing, which is an important thing. We will really get started as soon as the last student is out the door this summer, begin in earnest with the construction. You'll see some different patterns to how you enter the building and that kind of thing, but you won't see students who are reassigned outside of the building somewhere. All the kids are going to kind of stay in place here. There will be different ways in which traffic and pedestrian traffic and so forth get rerouted along the way, but we think that's going to work pretty well. And the most important thing is that we don't end up with a disrupted student experience, and that's a safe kind of stretch of construction. The construction will go through the entire year. The interior work that we'll be doing will happen in the summers, and then we'll start the school year 24-25 really with all of this complete. And so it's roughly a 12-month process or so, with the pieces happening in the interior of this building occurring in the summer, and so they won't end up disrupting student activity. Just to put a little twinkle in your eye, no sooner will the contractors finish here, it will go over to the other side to get that side ready for your children when they leave Love Hall and go to the middle and upper school. And so we have a phase of this work that is going to include the Love Hall piece and then move over onto the upper school campus, right into the center of the campus where Scott Hall is, right across from Presley. Take that building out and rebuild that space with an innovation, kind of a STEAM center. And so that is also then going to follow and open in January of 26, and your kids will be right behind it, and hopefully still be in that building when the paint still smells fresh. And so that's kind of a sequence of work that we see over the next several years, and then we'll take a breath, maybe just for a day, and see what's next. So that's what's coming. We're pretty excited about it, pretty fired up about it. Have had a wonderful kind of generous response from our community to this work, and so we're continuing to do that side of it as well. As I say, our thing right now is to build buildings and pay for them, and both of those things are going pretty well. And this construction, I think, is particularly meticulously planned in such a way that we're really accounting for the younger students here in our school and what their needs are in the middle of trying to rebuild their facility. With that, I'm going to hand off to the head of our lower school for a little more of a programmatic update. Yes. Lauren, come on up. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And I just want to circle back and thank again all of our volunteers who have made this year so successful. I especially want to thank Farah for her work. Again, every parent volunteers deserves the thanks and recognition that Farah was giving you earlier, but I'm sure you would agree that no one deserves it more than Farah. She epitomizes grace under pressure, is an invaluable resource, and is an ultimate encourager for the faculty and staff. I've leaned on her more in my first year than I ever expected I would need to lean on anyone, and I'm forever grateful for her support. Join me in thanking Farah for her service to the school as PAWS president. And I'm really going to listen to what Naya was saying about being present. I also have the number 27 in my head because that's how many days of school we have left, 27. Which also means that it's 28 days until construction starts. So we've got a lot going on in the remaining weeks of school. But I'm going to challenge our students, I'm going to challenge myself as faculty and a parent, I'm going to challenge you all to really be present in all of the exciting activities that we have coming up, not only for you, but for the students as we wrap up the end of the school year. For example, on Friday, our 5th grade students will venture down the hill for their middle school shadow day. Each of our kids will be paired with a 6th grade buddy, attend a 3rd period class, and even experience middle school recess before coming back up the hill. Let me just warn the 5th grade parents, they don't come back to us the same. They are so ready for all of the freedoms that they think middle school offers after this shadow day. So just prepare for it at home. I also, on Saturday, we have our innovation fair. I hope that you and your family are planning on joining us. It is our biggest one yet. We have 20 booths, 56 teacher volunteers, 46 parent volunteers, and 70 student volunteers, including our green cats and innovation cats. Come take a spin on a hoverboard, make your own paint, build a bridge, or explore the ocean through VR. So much to do as we explore the theme, how does innovation connect us? It is certainly an event not to be missed here on Saturday from 10 to 2. And then after field day and parent-teacher conferences, but before the much anticipated end-of-year parties, our students will participate in the 2nd annual Math Day on May 19th. This year, our theme is greater than, as in math is greater than one person, one day, one answer, one mind. Each grade level has a theme, and the goal for each project is to have a lasting impact. So stay tuned for more information that will be coming home about that through Seesaw. And now it's time for our featured presentation. You are all in for a treat. Tim Downs joined Westminster as the Director of Athletics, good grief, in July 2015 after 8 years at Emory University. With more than 20 years of experience working in sports and recreation, Tim has also held leadership roles with Franklin and Marshall College, California Institute of Technology, Johns Hopkins University, and the Patriot League. He holds a bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College and a law degree from Washington and Lee University. His professional affiliations include the NCAA Management Council, NCAA Championships Committee, Sports DeKalb Board of Directors, and the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, among others. In May 2014, Tim was named Under Armour's Division III Athletic Director of the Year. Tim's wife and youngest son are both in the upper school. Beth is on the administration team and Will is a junior. Beth and Tim are also parents to Kelly, who is a senior at UGA, and Drew, who is a lacrosse superstar in his sophomore year at Rhodes College. You may have seen the announcement that after 8 years at Westminster, don't know why I'm having a hard time with the name of our school. I just need something one syllable. At Westminster, Tim will be leaving to join the leadership team at Hillbrook School in San Jose, California, to establish their athletic program as the school adds upper school grades to its K-8 divisions. While he will be greatly missed, this is a wonderful opportunity for him, and we hope that we will see him frequently around campus when he returns to visit Beth and Will. Welcome, Tim.
So inevitably, wherever we go, it's Westminster.
Yes, I think I've just
So-
ingrained that now.
Well, thank you. And Farrah, you have been a saint in kind of the ringer I put you through. So we planned this early fall. And in that time, we've had a transition in Director of Athletics. And yesterday, I had jury duty with, no end in sight. And it was a pretty interesting day because there were two possibilities for me. I told Farrah there was the Little Thug trial and the possibility, and I think we're a couple weeks early for the Trump grand jury. But I wasn't selected. You heard law degree, and usually that they'll X me right out of the law year process. But Farrah mentioned this earlier, and we did this presentation probably 4 or 5 years ago. And first blush, I was like, this is way too soon. And after that event, and I think there probably must have been a big soccer tournament the weekend prior to that event, because I had parents coming up to me, is it time to get the professional coach? Should we be sending our daughter to Europe for the training camps? And it felt like it was the absolute perfect time. Because this is when there's a lot of noise out there around athletics and what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And this is really the perfect time to kind of chart your course. And it requires a lot of discipline. And speaking of discipline, I was sitting over there in front of the 3 signs that say, do not touch.
They're talking to you, Tim. Do not touch.
For 30 minutes, and all I wanted to do was touch it. All of them, and I didn't. So take that as inspiration, but also what I will be able to bring that I could not last time is experience 5 years later with our children and kind of where they are in the path that they've taken. And this is what, start with the end in mind. When our daughter Kelly was looking at colleges, the first place we went out to Stanford University. And when we're going out there, I'm like, we're gonna get there. It's gonna be this beautiful campus in Northern California, and there aren't gonna be any students because nobody gets into Stanford. And so we go out there, there were students and they were pretty awesome. The thought wasn't that Kelly was gonna go to Stanford. The thought was, we're gonna set a bar. and we're going to set a bar at what I felt was probably one of the highest, and we're going to shoot for that. And usually, if you plug a destination into your into your maps, you're going to get there, and there are going to be twists and turns along the way. There are going to be detours. Kelly is in about 3 weeks. She's graduating from UGA and has had a wonderful, wonderful experience there. And we couldn't be more proud of her. It's not Stanford, but again, that was never the intention. So I'm going to give you some kind of realities around the whole kind of sports scene, but really set the bar high. That's really, really important. And so, let's see. I think we've all heard, you hear, especially around NCAA basketball time, they'll have the ads, only 2% of college athletes go on to play professional sports. And that's become pretty cliche. I think what's interesting is 60% of college athletes think they will play professional sports. We have I think there are about 8 million high school athletes in this country. 6% of those will go on to continue their sports in college. We have our signing day tomorrow, and last year we had 32 students go on to play sports in college. Tomorrow it's going to be around 30. So we're a little bit more than twice that average. And then 80% of our students are playing sports here. So take that 80% number, and it really does kind of pyramid up as you move through it. But those are the numbers. Those are some of the realities. I think there are, when you get into it, and you're in your backyard, and you make that goal against your sibling, and you're like, I'm going to play professional sports. Everybody has that dream, and eventually it does pyramid up. But I will say that with the athletics piece here at Westminster, what I have found in those numbers is that for our students, we have super motivated students. And it's not a chase of a scholarship, and an interesting number with scholarships. I haven't updated this number since before the pandemic, but last year or 3 years ago in this country, there was something like $1 billion of athletic scholarships that were handed out. There were $22 billion of academic scholarships. So the first thing I tell everybody is get good grades. That's number one. That opens all the doors, and the rest will follow. There aren't the athletic scholarships out there that people think. And so for our families, what this really is, in playing sports at Westminster, it does give, it gives a little bit of a boost in the admissions process, and that's important, and it tends to have our students gravitate upwards academically, and that's important, and it really does open up doors. And the benefit for those 80% who are playing at least one sport, all the benefits that just make them better students and make them better people, and that's really the goal of our program. So what you should be thinking about right now is, and this is probably the most important thing, is that right now for your daughters and sons, they should be doing a lot of things. Entry into organized sports, this is where they really are just developing so many things around their cognitive ability. And 80% of their time should be spent outside of organized sports. Deliberate play, what deliberate play is, that's when they just go out to the playground, go out to the love field and just play. And that's really, really important. When they get to ages 13 and 15, and this is when they'll be moving more into the organized part of the Westminster Athletic Program, we want them to play a lot of sports, play a lot of different sports, and when they're not playing sports, still they should be out playing, they should be having fun. When they are in the upper school and they're moving from JV to varsity, that's really the time where we see the benefits of perhaps playing one sport. And again, things pyramid up. Our program, where we can, it's intended that you will play a sport every single season. When we get into where the GHSA takes over in terms of the regulations, there's a lot of overlap that makes that harder. But where we have control, we want everybody to be doing something different every season. Go back one. So this is where the noise is, and the youth sports industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And it definitely and absolutely behooves these clubs to, get you signed early and have you connected to their club year-round. I'm going to get into a lot of the data of why that is not a good thing, but just to understand that's what you're going to be battling. And you're going to be battling this need, or not really a need, but kind of this feeling that if I do not do this, I'll be left behind. And you couple that with college recruiting used to happen in the high schools, and now it happens almost exclusively through the clubs. So those connections that the college coaches are making are typically with your club coaches. There was a point probably 4 or 5 years ago where we had 8 Division I girls soccer commits, and none of them had even set foot on the Westminster varsity, soccer field. I think that the NCAA has changed some of their legislation, and I would have used as a litmus test that you cannot commit to a college until you could drive or you've gone to your junior prom, because it's crazy. So much changes. But that's that's the way things have shifted, and so those coaches' connections, and it also. College coaches can be much more efficient if they go to clubs instead of having to visit a lot of high schools. They can have their own camps. Everything is driven by money, and the result will be the same. Our goal and our mission is much more connected to the educational mission and the growth of your daughters and sons. So why you should not jump into just playing one sport too early. There was a really interesting study, Ohio State recently, that of kids who started playing one sport at a very young age, much higher rates of adult physical inactivity. I find that interesting. Those students were usually the first to quit their sport, and that gives you just a lifetime of consequences. There was another study of 1,200 youth athletes that found that early specialization was the strongest predictor of injury, and that those students were 70 to 93% more prone to injuries than those that had played multiple sports. So that's why specialization is not a great thing. This is why playing lots of sports is a really good thing. So better overall skills and ability, your motor and athletic development just makes sense if you're doing a lot of different things, that's going to grow. And the ability to take skills from one sport and transfer it to another is really, really important. Increased motivation that students will have if they're, and it's like anything. If you're just doing something year-round, you're going to get bored with it. And kind of ownership of their own experience is really, really important. Smarter, more creative players. A lot of this goes to the cognitive ability of doing a lot of things. And this is one of the things that college coaches are really looking for. And in college athletes, typically, I think 88% of college athletes have played more than one sport in high school. If you look at all the Heisman Trophy finalists, they all played multiple sports. And college coaches, they have big egos, and they really want to, they would rather have someone that is showing potential, who's a great athlete, than someone who is a very sport-specialized, trained athlete that they will have to break and mold in a different way. And again, all of that makes sense, but you're facing all the pressures of, okay, you have to, if you don't do this, you're not going to make this club, you're not going to be able to play for your high school. There are a lot of things that club sports will leverage. And I think this one is probably the most important. Free play equals more play. And you all know that. I mean, when our sons and daughters are out in the backyard, and they're out there, if they're with their friends, they're out there until it gets dark, till they can't do it anymore, instead of something structured with adults that has an end time, and then they're off to wherever. that is, that's kind of that deliberate play, which is so important in the development of our kids. So, and please know that everything that I'm telling you right now is very self-serving, because we want to, when it's 6th and 7th grade, that's when we are taking your sons and daughters into our program. That's what we're looking for, and that's what the program is very much tailored to. Everything that I mentioned, we've developed it in a way that will provide multi-sport experiences, provide opportunities to develop as an athlete, and then at the right and appropriate time, you will become more skilled in a specific sport. So 86 teams in 26 sports. That's how many teams and sports we have here at Westminster, which, and I'll brag on that breadth of the program, that's more than any other school in the state of Georgia. And that's kind of centerpiece for all of the success that I'll talk to in a bit. 1,000 students that are participating in sports, in at least one sport. That's supported. We have over 140 coaches now, 150 coaching spots. So we have some of our teachers who are also coaching more than one sport. But I've said all along, we don't have the best athletes here. We don't have the best coaches here. We have super motivated students, and we have adults who know how to motivate students towards a goal. And that is really, really powerful, really powerful. And the success bears that out. 313 state championships is about 100 more than Marist, and they're in second. Last year, the program was recognized by an organization under the umbrella of Sports Illustrated as the #1 program in the country. And that I do brag on. I mean, I really do brag on that, because that is validation of how the program is structured, and it's the validation of some really, really hard work and some smart work. Wanted to thank you for giving Drew a shout out with that. Drew is a sophomore at Rhodes College, and there was a lot of this that we had to resist. And I was talking to Beth about this morning, and all of Drew's summer league colleagues, they had private coaches and they were playing year round. I think there's only one of those kids who's playing lacrosse now. And right now, Drew is 3rd in the nation in scoring. And I think it was his junior year, he wasn't going to do anything in the fall. He wanted to play more lacrosse, and we made him play football. And so for 3 hours every day, he was on that field, did not get a whole lot of playing time, but he had a community, and he had something that would engage him academically that helped him. I think just in terms of mental health and wellness, it kept him connected in a way, and it gave him skills that otherwise he would not have had. And that's really, really important. All right, I think, because I can't top that story. And thanks for letting me brag on that. I'm gonna stop there, and I do want to see if you have any questions, and also, I think more importantly, I'm gonna stick around and answer any questions for you. But and again, I do want to acknowledge that this is really, really hard, and Sandy Penn White, who is one of our upper school teachers. Sandy's had, Wade is a junior, he is her 3rd child. Tori, her middle. Tori won our Outstanding Athlete honor probably 3 or 4 years ago. Tori had 16 varsity letters here. And Tori was one of the best soccer players in the nation. They stopped playing club because the club said you could not play for your high school. And that was really, really hard. And Tori is, she is just having an outstanding career at University of Georgia and is just doing great. But I do want to acknowledge the pressures that you will receive. Both, some of it's internal, a lot of it is what you're feeling from other families, and a lot of it is just the system. Know that that's all about generating revenue, This is all about developing your daughters and sons in a way that feels very connected to the academic mission at Westminster. All right, I'm going to stop there. Yes? I'm sorry.
Can you talk a little bit about when athletics sort of starts on campus? I remember I don't know if intramurals is still happening, starting in third grade. I know that used to happen. And then when do they start playing, like in middle school? Is it like sixth grade? Are there some opportunities?
And so this is fresh on mind. We had for rising seventh graders, we had an information session last week for families. Participation in non-cut sports can begin in sixth grade. So in the fall, that would be cross country. Then we have wrestling and swimming and diving in the winter, and then track and field in the spring. So sixth grade students can participate. There's no competition there, but they can be part of that. And then seventh grade is when competition begins. And again, the program is set up in terms of no overlap, in terms of non-cut sports every season. We want to get, 80% is great. It would be better if that was 100%. And we'd love to get every student involved one way or the other. And then again, it's good. So when they get into ninth grade, and that's JV participation, when you get to varsity, and JV still very much no overlap in seasons, play a lot of sports, it does become much harder at the varsity level, and it should be. And really the goals will shift to not everybody's getting playing time, and we really are starting to do the things that will give our students the success on the courts and the field. And so it will kind of, but students will have an opportunity every season all the way through 12th grade to be involved in some sport.
Question about when you talked about the club sports and the girls who had signed with colleges. I think we have all seen, especially at the younger age, the club sports are the ones really trying to push that annual year-round participation. How do you reconcile that though, when it seems that the 8 girls who did sign with college only played in club sports?
Right. Well, and it's interesting, and I think there has been a little bit of a shift here. And it was 2015 when I started here, the big question for me is, how are you going to manage that? The club sports and the kids who, they're not playing for their high school team, and we had, I would say there was a lot of tension between that. And so instead of creating more tension, we embraced it, right? And this gets to the point where we've invested a lot in kind of the non-sport specific development of our students. And what I mean by that is we have 3 full-time strength and conditioning coaches. We've had a sports psychologist who's there in the afternoons. Our sports medicine staff, we have 4 full-time trainers. They are the best in the country, absolutely the best. And everything kind of works out from that. Our swim coach, Sharon Loughran, is trained as mindfulness training, and before practice, our students are on the deck, sound asleep, doing their mindfulness and separating from their academic day. So our focus has really been on these things with the understanding, the club sports are going to happen, and that's where that sports-specific piece will come in. And so we've embraced that to the point where Sharon will work with the club coaches, and that our swimmers, where they would usually come from Monday practices, they go swim with their clubs the rest of the week, and then they come back for the meets. They're actually coming to more of our practices because Sharon is working with the club coaches in making sure the training is consistent. And she really ramped up the practices and made them harder so the kids came back. And so it's situations like that. And I remember having conversations with Tori and I think it was Delaney Graham's, their club coaches on, what can we do to, ensure that we're not putting kids and families in the middle of all this, and that they can put the W on and play in front of their classmates and all of that. So there has been a little bit of a shift that seemed to work. And, eventually, and with some of the higher end clubs, and I'm thinking specifically with girls soccer, parents just got fed up with that. And a lot of them walked away from it, and I think one of those clubs has since collapsed because of that. And so, where we can, we will work with it. And I think maybe a better example is some of our best girls basketball players are our best soccer players. And they'll miss 1 or 2 practices, maybe some games, to go play with their club soccer team because they're traveling somewhere. But instead of having kind of hard and fast rules, you can't do that, we've tried to embrace it. And that can be challenging because you're balancing a lot in terms of commitment to team and some of those things. But and again, I think understanding we do not own the athletic development of our students. And that can happen in a lot of different ways. Our program will be structured so you become more of a well-rounded athlete. It's more of a liberal arts approach to athletics. And we don't allow someone, the question came up, can we do this sport here at Westminster in the fall and the spring? And the answer was no. That just philosophically doesn't fit with things that we're doing. This is great.
I guess, so my question is, all right, I have a question, but I'll stick with one question. So my son plays predominantly he plays baseball year-round. He is on a travel team, but he also plays football, and then he does basketball currently, but we'll probably end up having to move that just because of scheduling. For baseball specifically, I know in high school it's a little bit easier with the travel teams because the travel season starts after the actual high school season, but in middle school, a lot of teams don't have like 7th and 8th grade teams. So, and his travel team will take priority. How does that work? Because they play a lot of games. And 7th and 8th grade is, for baseball, it is at 12 or 13, it's different. There is a gap if you don't start baseball relatively early and playing consistently. You can do other sports, but there is a gap. How does it work in 7th and 8th grade with kids like my son who self-prioritizes baseball over all other sports?
This is what I would tell you, keep doing that, right? And there are some sports, and I think tennis is one, baseball in terms of hitting, it is one, and I'm going to come back to one of the negative parts about playing so much baseball early, but I think hitting, things that need repetition, and swimming to some extent, that, kind of getting that repetition, a lot of repetitions, that's a good thing. Baseball, our high school program, we see the shoulder injuries and the overuse, a lot of that, and you've got to, be mindful of that. Do those other things, but just play a different sport. And that's the beauty of this program, is that, we're the only school, GPS just added squash, but we were the only school until this year that had squash. And we have rowing for girls, and no one else in the Southeast has that. But those are sports where our kids are tracking academically. Those colleges will sponsor that. But it's this idea that I'm going to try something and have success with it and continue it, or maybe not, and then dust myself off and try something else. One of the things we talked about on that middle school program was for our panel, give me a highlight or give me a middle school story that you'd like to tell everybody. Mine was that my 2 boys were cut 4 times from the middle school basketball team. And, that could have been an awful thing, and it wasn't fun at the time, and that's, heartbreak, but, that's, if you can do that in a safe environment, and they kept plugging away. Both of them made the 9th grade basketball team. And that is just such a wonderful story of resilience and dusting yourself off, and that's what this program is developed to do, and that's why those 86 teams, that's why that's really, really important. So become an athlete, play other sports, play, something else in the, in the spring. A warning that if you put lacrosse sticks in their hands and they get a chance to run after other boys and hit them with a stick, and it's legal, they might not come back to baseball.
We already discussed that. He's not.
But try different things. And again, I am just, and I hope this points this out, and I've seen it work with my own kids, is just become an athlete. And, and I'll say, and then I'll get to you that, take that 15% number of our kids who are going on to play sports in college. That means that, those are your highly trained athletes, highly skilled athletes. 85% of your roster is made up with other. And that's where we've really made our mark, is focusing on that other and having them become athletes. And, that's worked really, really well for us, and that's important. So stay with the baseball.
Are they penalized, I guess, if they have to miss practices and games?
No, and that's where we really, it's going to be a little bit different when you get to the varsity level. But up to that point, absolutely not. No, yes.
Two questions. First of all, thank you very much, Tim. It's been really, really helpful. I guess first is an expectation question.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids have been playing sports at the rec level for many years, and they're going to transition into middle school and then hopefully start playing middle school sports. What do you see from a competition standpoint? And my question really is, if you're having great success, you see kids having great success at the rec level, when they come over to Westminster and start competing for middle school sports, is it going to be very difficult? Is it going to be very different? Should they reset their expectations on what sports they might be able to play based upon their skill level? And so that's the first question. The second question is, I've heard from parents in other private schools that some schools will have a more focused effort on athletes come 9th grade. And so if your child is playing a sport and playing 7th grade, 8th grade, is he or she going to be able to continue in high school because the school's got 6 basketball players coming in 9th grade, or 6 football players, or whatever it is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's a great question, because this allows me to rail on some other private schools and talk about how we do things here. So I would say expectations. I think that's really interesting, because usually with club sports you're playing with a small number, right? And they're usually around your age. When you get to middle school, and maybe you're not winning as much as you did, or maybe you hear about all these state championships. I just have to tell parents, trust the process, because we are really focusing on all of these things and keeping students engaged physically. Our son Drew, who's playing in college now, Drew is 6'3". Beth is what, 5'3", 5'4". This might be deceiving looking. He grew when he was a senior in high school into college. Those things happen. We want to keep as many students engaged as we can, and again, kind of make them athletes. So I do hear, this middle school, we didn't win any games, this is an awful experience. It has to be beyond that. And it is somewhat of it's a challenge for our coaches to be able to, because everybody should be playing, getting experience, trying things. And you give up a little bit there in what it says on the scoreboard. So that's discipline, that's patience. Once kids get into the upper school program, I think they get it a little bit better. Mm-hmm. We do not have growth years going into the upper school. And that has been, and so it can be a little bit frustrating, because you have a better body, or more knowledgeable body of work with a 10th grade student, an 11th grade student. How they're going to do academically, athletically. They've probably developed a little bit more, but we do not have growth years. And so this very much, and so we need to develop students in the right way, beginning right now. Mm-hmm. And it is very much a development, and we think of our programs, it's not really middle school and upper school. You're going to come through a sport, 6th grade all the way through, and then you'll jump from sport to sport. But the schools that have done that, I've seen some, that can be a shortcut, but I've also seen with a number of schools, their rosters are diminishing because families are seeing the exact thing that you're saying. That why would I commit to playing this sport if when I get to high school, you're just bringing in students who are better athletes, and I'm never going to play. And so, again, I think there's a shortcut there, but longer term, I think these schools, and they're feeling it right now, to where they don't have a JV team anymore. 9th grade teams are falling off the face of the map. Our participation numbers are better now than they ever have been, largely because I think you feel like you're valued part of the program from the start all the way through.
Thank you.
Maybe like 2 more questions?
2 more questions? Can you pick? Farrah, you pick.
Yeah, over there. No one.
Great. Tim, we've got 86 teams. Seems like there's so many teams jockeying for field space. It's always an issue. You just bulldozed that ask field behind that some teams were using for practice. Are we building a new field somewhere to be able to accommodate all of these teams that have been using that field?
Yeah, and I'll take issue with Keith calling that a softball field.
Yes.
That was the JV boys lacrosse field where I was coaching.
Actually, the recess playground for our school.
It's the JV boy. And do you all want to hear? Because I have photos of the undefeated JV boys lacrosse season from 4 years ago. I love that space. Absolutely love that space. So next year we're going to have to find some. In the future, we're adding another field. We're going to do some things over the summer camp, and it's really a lacrosse issue.
Yes.
It's a middle school and JV boys lacrosse issue, and you know, I love that space. It's not a lacrosse field, right? And there's opportunity at the summer camp for some new space there for next year. Beyond that, we've got some really, really great plans. It's going to be really great. And if this last question wants to donate towards that, and Downs Family Field sounds really, really cool. That'll keep the hands down.
I'll give it down. I'll start it off. Tim, do you have a sense of numbers of varsity multi-sport athletes? Because I'm sort of always fascinated. I feel like when I'm looking at Instagram or something and it's someone who's a really good cross-country runner and then all of a sudden it turns out that that woman is signed to play D1 college soccer or something like that. And I'm sort of always amazed at that. I think there's some good stories to tell, but I'd love to know just numbers of multi, and if you don't have it, you can get back to us.
So we have to do, I think it's close to 60% are playing more than one. And we have to submit, there's a survey we do every year. But I'll speak to the importance of that we used to only have awards night for the upper school, and it's all the academic. There was one athletic award for top female athlete, outstanding athlete, and top male. We added an award, it was the 3-sport athlete award. And we give a really cool banner, and it's for those in their senior year. They have played every single season. When you get to your senior year and you're doing that, that's really, really hard. Because, for example, football goes to December, and basketball is already a month ahead, and now soccer starts in January. And so if you're playing a winter sport, swimming might not finish until closer to March. So that's become really hard. This year, I think we have about 15 students who have done that. And you're right, I think what you'll see these outstanding soccer players, and you're like, oh, I thought they were a basketball player. And those are the stories. And again, I don't want to take full credit for that because we had motivated students, right? And some of this is just what they would be doing anywhere. But we built our program kind of with that notion and to support that and recognize that in a way that I do feel is a little bit different than what other schools have done. And I think it, over time it bears itself out. Well, but I'm sticking around. Yeah. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. Tim will stick around a little bit longer. So that includes our parent coffees. If you are craving more parent ed, come to our Friday FaceTimes. They're Fridays at 1 o'clock on the Pre-First Playground in the Pavilion. Meet with Becky McKnight and Peyton Williams. They discuss tricky parenting topics. This week we'll be promoting academics without the stress. It's an easy topic. Bring in your electronics this week to recycle for the Earth Week Tech Drive, Innovation Fair, Sprite this Saturday. And look in your emails for information about field day, end of the year parties, the swim proficiency form, and also a feedback form about your experience with these events this year. So thanks so much. Please get breakfast. Talk to Tim.